Hi, welcome to this week's edition of Blues Talk, where John, Dave, and myself are going to look back over our draw against the Ospreys, look back at some of the other results of the weekend, and look forward to our match against Glasgow on Friday night. Well, boys, we had a great game, 29 all, but we did let it slip.
Yeah, well, in one way, I was sick that we didn't get the win. In another way, I was very happy that we didn't lose.
Yeah.
Like I say, it was a cracking game. It was I'd say a neutral was looking at that going, wow, that was a great ad for the Rabo. But on balance, we'll probably look back at the end of the season and go, we did just enough to get out of Dodge there and keep our unbeaten, hopefully our unbeaten home record.
But we had the game, like, we gave away a very, very foolish penalty right at the end.
We did.
Well, we had the game won, and then we had the game lost, and then we had the game won again, and then we ended up drawn. I mean, it was, as John said, it was a cracking game. It really was. I mean, you had two good teams going at a full pelt. The game ebbed and flowed, as Mr. Thornley would say. The ebb and flow of psychic energy was present, but the game did ebb and flow. I mean, one team, Leinster were on top for the first half without really being able to put Ospreys away. Ospreys then were dominant for at least the first part of the second half. Again, managed to get up a lead, but couldn't put us away. And then we came back, but it was just too close at the end. And in a game that close, when the teams are going at it the way they are, it's always going to be something like a penalty or a mistake that.
How often have we seen Dan Bigger do that to us?
Yeah, so many times. I mean, I don't know how many times we said it on Blues Talk. Ospreys have our number.
Yeah. They have the manuals.
Yeah, well, look, if you look back at our two tries that we scored, Strauss's was the first after 5 minutes, but in the lead up to that, we obviously we got the tries, but both of them were unfortunately on the sideline, so Gotbert didn't get the conversions, or the kicks were extremely difficult for him, and as a result, those 4 points would have made the difference in the end.
Well, one thing to note in the first try, and we see it now when it comes up, is the commitment of Darren Hudson. Who did his hammer, and when the ball comes back over his side, you'll see him hobbling along trying to get it back. I mean, great break from Mackin, who's been playing very well actually this year so far.
A great play by Gotbert to keep that move going.
Yeah.
You'll see. Actually, if he hadn't have made that little pass back into the 22, is it here?
You can see him there. Hop along.
Back. Oh, he fell over, but he got the pass away, and off goes Dave Carney. He actually did a bit of work here. Look, he pushed your man off, breaks another tackle, and it just keeps the ball alive. And off goes Jack McGrath. I think that is.
No, he's next up.
Oh, there's Jack McGrath. Sorry.
Great hands.
Lovely offload.
Yeah. Beautiful little offload to Strauss, who wasn't going to be. Look at the size of Bigger beside him. He's a big boy.
In a way, you could see a lot of the game in microcosm in there, because when we turned over the ball in their 22 initially, you could see the way they committed to the ruck and we didn't, and they absolutely blew us out of that ruck, for example. But then you could see the way that the way Leinster counter-attacked. Rob Kearney, good hands, good strength, and clever play from McGrath to bring in Strauss, and that was a case of knife through butter, as you mentioned earlier. Unfortunately, we weren't consistent enough with it. We didn't earn the right to play that rugby as often as we should have done, because what Ospreys did was for large portions, particularly the second half, absolutely destroyed us at the breakdown.
Yeah. And I mean, we can look at Kearney's try. I mean, this came after 13 minutes, and I really thought we were in for a trouncing here. I thought we were going to rake up. We had two tries after 13 minutes. Thought we were going to get the bonus point.
Yeah. I thought we were a shoe in for a bonus point. I think it was, what was it you say, 13 minutes?
Yeah.
And here we go. 5 points, thank you and good night.
But there was a nice bit of work there by Fanning just to turn that ball over.
That was afterburners again. Look at the speed of that guy.
He has genuine pace. I think Richard Fussell will not want to see that again.
No. Kearney burnt him.
Kearney took him inside and outside very easily. I mean, Fussell should have the pace to be able to allow a guy to take him inside and then make it up on the outside, but he didn't for some reason.
Yeah, Kearney did a lot of work there. That it's all in the hips. If you'll see it here, he sends him the wrong way a bit like George Best in his day. He just.
Where did it all go wrong for George?
Now here's Gopperth dummies your man inside, and he just
Times the pass lovely, doesn't
timed
he?
the pass perfectly. And there he goes. You can see that he didn't know where to go. Fussell didn't know where to go. He looked one way, looked the other way, and it was too late. It was good night, Vienna.
In a way, I felt sorry for Carney that Hudson's. I felt sorry for Hudson, but I felt sorry for Carney that Hudson's injury prevented him playing a fullback for the entire match. Although he did score that try from the wing, because he's looked good at fullback. He's looked at home there, and with the personnel Leinster have, he's not going to get a huge amount of chances to play there during the normal run of the season. And that was one of the. I'd say he was looking forward to that opportunity, and it kind of got taken away from him. But I thought he was one of our better players in the day.
Yeah, you could say the same about Ian Madigan. He was teeing up to come on and replace Goppert, and he had to go in very early and go to full back because he couldn't go on the wing. So
and I mean I thought he was he looked like he was wasn't really match sharp, and because maybe Goppert's putting a bit of pressure on him now, he looked like he was trying to do a little bit too much. In aspects of game, not all. I mean, I thought some of his game was very good.
I thought he forced his passing a couple of times. All right,
his first pass was straight into touch.
I thought he was forcing. We also have to remember. I mean, although he has played there at school, he's not. He is not a fullback. He's an out half and
a very good one.
And a very good one at that. But playing at that in a game at that level out of position is always hard. It doesn't matter if you're and because he's a good footballer, he can make a fist of it. But it's not his natural position, and his inclinations don't lie in that direction, as it were. Yeah.
Well, anyway, they came back in the second half and scored a couple of tries to get back in. But then we put an enormous amount of pressure on them up on their line, and then the referee gave a yellow card against.
It was a special yellow card.
I've never seen that happen before.
I've no idea what it's for. I mean, I've watched.
Oh, did you not know?
No.
Oh yeah, it's for not having a Lions jersey and for
he didn't know his name.
Not having being a world recognised player who couldn't possibly be doing anything dodgy.
I've watched that game, and I've watched that particular section of the game because I was trying to work it out, so maybe you could shed some light on things. But no, I have no idea what that yellow card was for. And he did nothing. He did nothing for it. It was just one of those very strange decisions that referees give sometimes. I mean, they do give them, all of them.
But he said, I was watching the Rabo YouTube channel, and I just looked at the highlights, and he said something like it was perfectly clear. And Shane Jennings come up to him no, and he went, it was perfectly clear. I was wondering what the hell was so clear.
It was something. Yeah, he obviously didn't feel the need to explain it to anyone involved in the match.
I think the RTE commentator said something like. The hooker leads the line. Or
pushing too early, but that wasn't actually what happened. So, God only knows.
It's a mystery.
Yeah, but I mean, it could have been a real turning point in the game that we could have folded in upon ourselves and really let them away with the game. But we didn't. We came back amazingly strongly for that 10-minute period while he was in the bin. And we have McGrath.
Before we watch McGrath's try, there's a Mark Ella quote that you're very fond of quoting. Would you like to?
No, you go.
If I touch the ball once, we attack. If I touch the ball twice, we score. If I touch the ball 3 times, I score. And Jack McGrath thinks he's the new Mark Ella. Yeah. Here he goes, first time. He was superb. I'm glad to see he was rewarded with a call. I mean, to a certain extent, the Irish training squad is every fit player in Ireland. But, it's nice to see him get a bit of recognition. Jordan Murphy again, absolutely superb.
You're on edge.
Yeah.
That was one of his high points of the game there.
But it's really going to give O'Connor
I was talking to his cousin in the bar afterwards, right? One of his cousins, or she claimed he was his cousin anyway, right? And she was accusing us of bigging him up too much last week. So
sorry about that.
There he is, number 2.
Big up Jack McGrath this week instead.
Yeah, I think Genius needs no marketing campaign. I think he's the genuine article.
But isn't it given? It's great to give O'Connor some really nasty headaches. I mean, Murphy's playing out of his skin.
Yeah.
Jack McGrath, and again, sort of he up against Heaslip or O'Brien perhaps, and then we've got McGrath who's going to be up against Cian Healy.
In Ireland and Cian Healy.
Well, I think 2 of the most important things to have on a rugby team are 2 complete front rows and 2 complete back rows.
Exactly, and when you think that we had to get rid of Hankey this season, and we might have thought, we might be under a bit of pressure now to have the same quality in the scrum.
There he goes.
And notice who was providing the assist
as ever.
As ever, yeah.
Yeah, I have to say they showed an awful lot of character to come back after the card, after the 2 tries, that's a real sucker punch. 1, 2, you're 7 points ahead, then you're 7 points down, then you've a man in the bin. Most teams would have just gone, we're gone.
A team that was quite inexperienced at that.
If you look at the front row, they're under 20, certainly under 24.
But and if you look at the guys that actually did stand up in this, you have the 2 fellas we said, Murphy and McGrath, both wouldn't possibly be the starters if you were talking about playing in the Heineken Cup next weekend, and yet those are the fellas that seem to take on the responsibility to get the show back on the road.
Well, there's an excellent point. Their Heineken Cup team is not, you've got Alan Wynne Jones to come in, and you've a few guys to come in, but their Heineken Cup team is not a million miles from what was out there. Our Heineken Cup is a million and a half miles away from what's going on there. So, 2 ways of looking at that, I suppose, is one is, are they going to be freshly cooked enough by the time it comes along? But the other one is we're going to have some serious personnel to come in and they've got some serious challenges now as well. Cian Healy was a shoe-in for the Lions. Never mind Ireland, never mind Leinster, and now you've got Jack McGrath coming along behind him. Who, okay, you're not going to select Jack McGrath ahead of Cian Healy quite yet, but I can see in a couple of years' time where you'll be going, I don't care which one of them is picked.
This time last year, you wouldn't discuss it. I mean, it wouldn't be a subject for discussion. The fact is that it is now, that the question is there. I mean, I'd still, depending obviously on how he comes back, I'd still lean towards Keane for the Heineken Cup. But the question is there now, and the option is there.
But the thing is, though, we've won Heineken Cups, the last 2 Heineken Cups, on the base of having a huge and a great squad. Whether it's looking at the back row, being able to interchange, bring on someone like Jennings when McLaughlin gets tired or whatever, and also having the 2 scrum halves, by the way we've worked with those, and particularly the front row, the way we've practically changed the entire front row after 60 minutes, and you're replacing like for like instead of a much
there's not a huge drop
inferior player.
Yeah.
Whereas McGrath now is pushing up there, and as you say, there's not going to be a huge difference between Healy and himself. And it's only going to be good for us.
Well, I always felt that the area that McGrath had to work on most, or the area that would set Cian Healy apart from him most, was playing loose, and that's gone now.
He's catching up.
He's catching up there. I mean, Cian Healy is a
freak
of nature. I mean, for a guy
in a good way.
Yeah, in a good way. I mean, he is so athletic. I mean, the size of him, but the power, the pace, he's just unusual. Jack McGrath is a more traditional prop shape, shall we say. But he has that athleticism as well.
He was a lot bigger.
It's changing now. He's got more.
No, but that's what I mean. He's
very lean now. Yeah.
He's changing. Himself and his game are evolving, because he's doing what all good professionals do. They see what the guy in front of them has. How can I add that to my game, to what I have, and that will bring me up? And that's what he's done.
Well, anyway, that result, we got 2 points out of that, and leaves us in 3rd place behind next week's opponents, Glasgow, who played Ulster at the weekend, and they got out of jail there themselves.
Big time, yeah.
I mean, I don't know how Ulster didn't win that game by about 10 points.
They tried.
White line fever. It's the worst case of white line fever I've ever seen in my life from players.
Luke Marshall,
who you'd expect. I mean, Luke Marshall dropping a ball in and of itself is a rarity. To drop one within eyesight of the line is just, and they did. He wasn't the only one. In fairness, I mean, you can't blame him for everything. But that's what Glasgow have that they used to have. They had to be there to score that try at the end.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but Ulster coughed up 3 dead certs.
Oh, certs. Oh yeah.
And but as you say, Glasgow kept themselves in the game. They just were dogged. They wouldn't give in. And then I knew when I just flicked on. I was watching the Connacht match actually, and I flicked on. And I just happened to see it, and I said, they're going to score. They're definitely going to score here, and sure enough they did.
I was watching that game, and I was saying to Mary Malta in the second half, Glasgow are going to win this. Glasgow, as Ulster kept opportunity and after opportunity added to missed opportunity, I just said, Glasgow are going to nick this at the end, and literally with the last play of the game they did. And it was actually a very nice try. I mean, it was very simple. But it was just a nice little simple ball back out. Yeah. It wasn't anything flash, but the guy had to be there, the pass had to be made. And it's kind of symbolic of, I mean, we've seen what would be considered the 4 top teams. We've probably seen the 5 top teams of the league this weekend, including Munster as well. And we've seen them,
They're undoubtedly they are the
Yeah.
five because the Scarlets are not.
The Scarlets have dropped off
In
a
it.
cliff.
Yeah.
What we've seen is in Munster game where they came back from adversity. I mean, they were well down at half time and playing poorly as well.
18-9 down at half time.
Yeah.
And I really thought, again, I was just following it online, and I thought, geez, there could be Zebra's first competitive victory. But
Yeah,
not
I had
to
that
be.
game on Tinternet as well, and I thought
Saw the
at
highlights.
18-9, I mean, it looked like it. It wasn't as if to say at half time God Zebre could win this was some kind of crazy thing. Zebre had outplayed Munster. Munster weren't playing well, but they came out in the second half and just absolutely went up not one but two gears.
Quite
And-
obviously, Penny went into the dressing room and put a rocket up.
Oh,
to
yeah,
say
yeah.
he said to them, "Look, lads, you're here. These guys have never won a competitive game. If you don't go out there and finish them off,
Yeah,
I'll
well, sure.
finish you off."
Ironie's only competitive win was against Munster
Against
in their last
Munster.
ever fixture, so I don't think Munster wanted to repeat the dose.
They got 4 tries in the second half, and
Certainly
they've got
did.
maximum points in the table now. They've gone 10.
What we saw the teams. I mean, in fairness to Ulster, I mean, that was a game in which both Ulster and Glasgow were winners to a certain extent. In terms of Ulster can be relatively happy that okay they missed the chances, but they had to create them to miss
Yeah,
them,
yeah.
and they created a number of them against a very good team. Glasgow can be happy that they actually won the game for a start, and that they were able to stay, as you say, they were dogged and remained within touch of Ulster. So you saw Glasgow and Ulster both have positives to take out of that game. Obviously Munster do as well, and ourselves and Osprey. So you've seen the big five, as it were, and the performances they put in and the standard they're at. And I just think, I mean, it's shameful that we're not good enough to play in the English Premiership.
Yeah. Someday.
Yeah.
Someday
But
we
just-
might be as good as Newport Gwent Dragons.
But I mean, we'll go back to it, I suppose, towards the end. But
They did beat Ulster now.
Well, that's true.
there just doesn't seem to be any resolution with this. I mean, the English team and the French, they seem to be digging a little hole for themselves that they don't want to come out of.
Well, I think that a few quiet threats have been issued in the last week from various unions and the IRB. I mean, the IRB have actually said something which is extremely unusual. The CEO of the IRB made a few comments about how it'd be nice if the sides could get around, sit down, and trash this
They
out.
are looking for some sort
which was basically saying, sit down and trash this out before I come in and trash this.
Well, I just heard today that they are looking for a mediator now to try and to bring the two sides together. So
Yeah.
But
At least-
who's going to be a mediator in that? Who'd want to be a mediator in that?
Yeah.
Like it's gone.
but I think the English,
so
they seem
long.
to be very entrenched in their position, and maybe it's just what they want to give the
Spin.
the public face of. But
Well, you see, you also have to remember, I mean, there is, as you say, there's spin. I mean, every week there's an article on scrum.com, or to give it its full name, ESPN-scrum.com, who are, of course, part of the BT group.
Yeah.
So you've got all this kind of stuff coming out. The only Planet Rugby are saying the complete opposite, and of course they're part of News International. So you've got all this kind of stuff. I mean, it's very, very hard to say, but when senior figures in the game start mentioning IRB sanction for matches, it's over. I mean, it is all over. It's the Anglo-French tournament isn't going to happen.
Oh, well, I don't think
It's
it ever
not.
was.
Well,
but
the Anglo-French tournament isn't going to happen under the laws of rugby union.
I don't even think that the French and the English want it to happen. Really, it's just like when you see the statement they come out with just before the day before. It's always the day before they're going to sit down. They come out with shaking. We've got this big stick and you can't live without us. And,
yeah, but I mean, it was interesting. Then, so later on in the week,
they're not making that much money though.
Peter Brown. Philip Brown came out with a statement, and it's unusual for him to come out publicly as well.
Expressing his frustration.
Yeah.
And Lux, the head of the ERC, came out with a statement there today as well, which was kind of basically saying, well, look, we've had this tournament for 18 years, we've made 500 million euros out of it, we've done this, we've done that, and a few little subtle digs in there as well, saying,
like he wrote an open letter
come
to
into line.
Medi Olympic.
Yeah.
That's what I'm referring to.
Yeah.
So it's I mean, to a certain extent, I mean, we're nowhere further along the road than we were last week, but
And the next meeting isn't until
isn't October.
the day before the Heineken Cup kicks off, isn't it?
No, I think it's sometime.
The 11th?
Is it the 11th, or I thought it was the 22nd that they were having the meeting?
Oh, maybe you're right.
Excuse
me.
Yeah,
No, I
but
think
it
you're right.
is October.
I think you're
But
right.
we're not really no further along. But at least, I mean, the big stick has been taken out of its leather satchel.
Well, anyway, we look forward to stuff on the pitch. Obviously, I think we've got one of our toughest fixtures of the season next
Definitely.
Friday night.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely, unquestionably.
The start.
I'd
no, you
fear
go on,
that
Ed.
more than Thomond Park now. to be
Yeah, oh,
honest
yeah,
with you.
yeah,
I would
yeah.
fear that more than Ravenhill. And I'm not saying either of them are a walk in the park. I'd fear it more than going to the Ospreys.
Both those games exist in a bubble of their own creation, you see, because they are into pro derbies and there's such a history behind them. They kind of exist in their own little universe. I mean, it doesn't. Leinster could be the worst team in Europe. Munster could be the European champions, and Leinster beat Munster, and vice versa.
It's a
And
derby.
same with Ulster.
Yeah.
They exist. I mean, this is a kind of a regular league game, but it's a very frightening one because
Well,
of
look what they did to, as we were fond of calling it, Heineken Cup Leinster.
yeah.
Well, they didn't really rest anyone in that semi. That maybe one or two guys, but that was pretty much Heineken Cup
Yeah.
Leinster in the Rabo semi there against Glasgow. We got them by 2 points. You know, we barely got them out of it. You know, and it was in our home patch.
Yeah.
Now we're going over to their home patch. They're on a high. They've just beaten Ulster away. They're
And we only beat them like last November 6-0 and 2 Madigan penalties.
Yeah.
Horrible old night
dreadful
there.
game. Yeah.
That semi final was a bloodbath. I mean, it was described as such by Greg Feek at the time. He described it as a bloodbath, not because it was dirty or anything like that, just because of the sheer physical intensity of it.
It was awesome, yeah.
And
If we're gonna go, so if we're gonna be playing to that, I can't imagine we'd be at that intensity. But I wouldn't say we'd be too far off either.
you'd want to be getting ramping up to Heineken Cup intensity for that game.
It's a big game for both teams as well, because if we can take them out of it, it really it puts us in a brilliant position. They're them and Ulster were the top, and us were the top 3 last year, and could easily be again, depending on how we all go. But if they beat us, they're way out on top of the league, and they've also beaten the 2 guys, and they've even beaten Ulster away. We've got a draw with Ospreys at home, which compared to their record doesn't look so good. Munster could be brilliant, could be, you just don't know, because they're not going to play any decent team really till, well, that's unfair, but they're not going to play a top 3 contender until they play us.
Yeah.
And Munster are having a mini little tour, like a bonding
It's good, yeah.
training session over in Italy. Like they obviously decided to stay for the entire week. But just going back to Glasgow, like Glasgow are just going about their business in a very, very
Quiet, understated
but,
way, yeah.
But the way that they've done it, I mean, I remember going over to watch a Heineken Cup match there about 8-9 years ago. They played in this place, Hewendon. It was in the middle of nowhere.
They wouldn't open the bar.
Wouldn't open the bar. The facility was about, I'd say there was probably 2,000 people at it, and 800 of those were from Leinster. Then they moved to the football ground, Firhill. But now they've
Partick Thistle nil.
yes, Billy Connolly says. But like now they've moved into their own ground in Scotstoun, and it's kind of a nearly purpose-built stadium for them around, similar to sort of what Leinster have done in the RDS, and it's theirs, and their training facilities are right beside it and meant to be really, really good. But they haven't gone down the route like Edinburgh and just using the national stadium and having 5,000 people rattling around in it. If they get 5,000 into their ground,
It's a good
It's
full
a
house.
good-
full.
yeah.
Because they're I believe the stands at either end of the ground, which are temporary stands, are not in place. Something to do with the sports.
Right.
It's an athletic stadium as well. So 5,000 is actually a full house, and I think the game is sold out.
Yeah, but like you're going to have a great atmosphere with 5,000 in a small stadium, around 5,000 in a football ground.
It's all about the whole. For want of a better phrase, the whole product.
Yeah.
People are going along and they're going to have a great night. They're going to see 2 cracking teams. The atmosphere is going to be brilliant. So, even if you're not hugely into the rugby, you've got, entertainment, as it were, from the atmosphere. And the ground itself apparently is very convivial. You can get a drink, and it's a bit not unlike Donnybrook or the RDS in terms of spaciousness.
Yeah.
So that's all good, and that's what Glasgow had to do, and I still think that's what Edinburgh have to do, although their hands are a bit more tied by their links to the SRU. But this run of games that we're having, just to go back to that, I mean, we're playing Glasgow, who are the third of what were predicted to be 3 of the top teams in the tournament. Obviously, we've seen Scarlets have fallen off a bit, but the great thing is we have those games over us. We don't have to do it again, and that's a huge advantage. Whereas other teams are playing teams that are a bit weaker, and then when they're a bit weaker, maybe during the autumn internationals or during the Six Nations, they have to face the stronger teams, which can be a bit of a disadvantage. We've got them gone now.
Well, yeah, it is swings and roundabouts. That we're coming in undercooked into these games. It's you got to play them all at some stage.
Oh yeah.
Ideally, yes, you could probably. It's great to have them behind you if you've won them,
Yeah.
but it's not so great to have them behind you if you're down the bottom.
If we get out of Scottstown, it always sounds like you're taking the Mickey out of the Scottish accent when you say it. If we can get out of Scottstown with a win, I mean that's an amazing start to the season. It
Absolutely.
really is. So
Best ever,
yeah, it would
just
be.
about.
But it would be an amazing start to the season, even forgetting the past in and of itself, in terms of how we expect the teams to perform, etc., throughout the season. Beating Clonetty away, even getting any kind of points for us against Ospreys is
But
always a triumph.
if you had said at the start of the season, you'd be 7 points after the first 2 games.
I was looking at the fixtures just before the season started, and I was going, we could be going to the Cardiff game, going, please give us a win here, because we're looking dodgy. If we'd have lost to the Scarlets, we might have bounced back against the Ospreys, but a tough visit to Glasgow, and we could be looking at maybe having 4 points going into the Cardiff game.
Yeah.
So we've already got 7, and if we can get even another 1, or preferably 4,
Yeah. Well, I mean,
we're not getting 5.
I wouldn't think so, but we might have some of our bigger name players back. Luke Fitzgerald should be back.
Yeah.
Rumours that Lottie Takuri might be available
If he gets his work visa.
If he gets his work visa, yeah.
That'll be great to see him. I'm not exactly sure, but I think he's going to be 34 soon, and it might even be next week. So if he doesn't play this week, we won't have had him as a 33-year-old. We won't get the best out of him.
It'll be interesting to see how many of them actually feed back in. I don't think Matt O'Connor will dump a huge amount in. I'd say he'll be aiming to have his full Heineken Cup team. Obviously, maybe for the Munster game, but certainly, obviously, for the first game in the Heineken Cup. But he'll hope to arrive at that selection through a gradual process rather than just kind of going, all right, lads, thanks for all that. 15 out, 15 in. So,
yeah. Well, I think he's going to blend them in over the next 2 weeks. I wouldn't be surprised, barring somebody like Healy with injury or Carney's. I think Carney seems to be coming along okay, but and so does Sean O'Brien. But barring something like Healy's injury, I'd say he'd like to have them all in at the Cardiff game. Maybe 2 of them in this week and 3 of them next week.
I was interested to see Jamie Heaslip doing the water boy, and that normally is a sign that they're going to be back the following week. Well, it's just historically that seems to be the case.
New coach, so it may or may not.
Oh, and the other thing is Heaslip is traditionally a guy who doesn't like missing matches.
Yeah.
He's played a hell of a lot of matches in his life.
I mean, he's a guy who traditionally likes to play and be playing and play every game. So maybe it was a case of, look, give him water boy, might shut him up.
Nothing is going to shut that fella.
Yes, and probably the other notable fixture over the weekend is Connacht against Ulster. And if Craig Clark can be back available for Connacht, I watched their match against Cardiff, and they were leading 10-9 at half time, and then the referee decided to take matters into his own hands, and he gave 18 or 19 penalties against. They even and you know how biased BBC Wales can be, and they were even they said, I cannot wait to hear what Pat Lam has to say about this. And Vernon, he was kind of a bit diplomatic about it, but they were absolutely
robbed.
Yeah.
Well, Craig Clark, as we all know, he's a 2-time Southern Hemisphere Super 15 winner, twice in a row. With the Chiefs, and he's a cracking player. He's you can't captain a team to 2 Super 15 titles.
Has he been capped by New Zealand at any level?
No.
So he could technically be.
He's on a 3-year contract, so he could technically. He's not that old either.
I'm not sure. I don't know what age he is.
I think he's 27ish, 28 maybe. I think he's about that age. So let's not get even near counting any of those chickens. The guy hasn't even put on a Connacht jersey yet.
Winning 2 hemispheric titles is no guarantee of selection for your international team, as Leo Cullen is well aware.
Or as Michael Bent. I was actually going to refer to Michael Bent.
No.
Get an Irish cap before he played for Leinster.
But no, it's going to be an interesting game. Connacht have a lot of good young players, but I've got a feeling Ulster will have a real bee in their bonnet about this, what happened the previous week. What they'll do to a certain extent, that might be Connacht's best opportunity, is that Ulster are actually thinking too much about what happened the week before, and if Connacht can keep focusing their mind on that and take their mind off what's happening in front of them, Connacht could have. But I don't see Connacht really doing anything. Although it's hard to know because
hard
again
to
it's a
know.
derby. These things exist, and again, it's not one of the El Clasicos, the European rugby, but I mean it does exist in a bubble to a certain extent of its own creation.
If
so
I had to put money on it, I'd be putting it on Ulster.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
I don't know
yeah.
as they're starting. I just can't see them losing another game, no matter who they're playing. I'm glad I'm not playing them this week. In fact,
Yeah.
I think they'll be coming out all guns blazing, and I wouldn't fancy, like, unfortunately for Connacht, that Ulster have lost their first 2 matches, and they will have a point to prove.
I've heard it said about Anscombe that he's a hard taskmaster and he doesn't take any crap at all. Where they didn't have the consistency under McLaughlin, while he was a great coach and he really got them going. He got them to a Heineken Cup final. He didn't. They were 6th in the league, I think, that year, so they didn't really have it every week. And I think Anscombe just is a guy who just doesn't accept any excuses or any shite off people. It's just he roasts them if they don't do well. He gives them a really hard time. So I can see them coming back with a big reaction this week.
and any of the inside backs who might be feeling a bit comfy in their seats, he has a fairly talented son as well who plays in those positions
Gareth.
down under. So
Yeah.
they want to be behaving themselves.
Yeah, I think he's a guy who played a lot of 10 and then they shunted him out to full back.
Goal kicker as well.
And he's a goal kicker, yeah. Can you imagine him coming across?
Yeah.
That'd be tasty. Anyway.
Well, anyway, Joe Schmidt announced his first, one of his first squads of 42, and probably, as you said earlier on, Dave, I knew him with 2 arms and 2 legs that work at the moment. He's pretty much going to be down in Carton House. But interesting that there was 20 Leinster in the squad selection, and most importantly, I think for someone like Jennings, at least it gives an opportunity for some, where he was kind of almost written off, and
totally, yeah.
And I know he went down to the World Cup, but he really was just a bag holder and cannon fodder, replicating Pocock and whatever for the Aussie game in the World Cup. But he had no chance. I mean, I think he got a handful of caps under Kidney, but at least he's being rewarded for having.
Shane Jennings is a whole lot better than that.
Well, I remember he broke his arm against All Blacks.
But I'd say he's probably been in plenty of these training squads. I mean, it wouldn't be anything new to him. The question is, will he actually get his fair chance to be in the real squads when they come round?
Well, I wonder now, is it because poor old Declan Kidney used to get accused of a lot of Munster bias in his days as Ireland coach. A lot of the time I think he just went with what he knew, and it wasn't necessarily a bias, it was just a tried and trusted, I know what I'll get from him.
Well, you see,
I wonder what I was going to say is, I wonder will Schmidt be the same, because he likes Jennings.
Yeah, well, you see, the thing is, the way
would he use him like he used them for...
But if you take Kidney, like, that was perfectly acceptable, back in 2009 when Kidney got the gig, because Munster were still a contender. Like, they won the Heineken Cup the year prior, they'd won the Pro 12 or the Celtic League as it was,
and were semi-finalists
at the time, and as you said, were semi-finalists the following season, and the Munster team was still a very strong team. Whereas if you look at, say, Leinster, over the last, the most consistent team probably in Europe over the last 3 or 4 years, between getting to Heineken Cup, 2 Heineken Cup wins, winning the Amlin last year when we were knocked out, and winning the Pro 12 and getting to 2 other Pro 12 finals. So my point is that the Leinster team at the moment is a strong team, and the players are there by merit.
The question is 20 enough?
Is 20 enough?
Well, depends on who you ask, Dave. Depends on who you ask.
Well, I saw that Archer made the team.
I mean, when you consider that virtually everybody else is injured,
Bent is injured,
and we're not allowed to select women, so
is Bent, well, isn't
it interesting that for years we've had very, very few front row forwards. Now we have, there's a few. We've got 2 hookers in Leinster. You've got Best
plenty
up
of loose head, perhaps.
Plenty of loose heads.
I think we're going to be looking at a few years of Nathan White. Comes along,
I can see Nathan
He's
White
only
being
2
brought
years
into
younger than Ross.
I can see him being brought into the setup. He's a very good player. We were talking about players we lost, actually. When you talked about Heinke, I thought about Nathan White. He was a big loss to us at the time. He's a big gain to Connacht, and he can be a big gain for Ireland as well. Joe obviously likes him. He brought him over in the first place. So when is he actually Irish qualified? Is it next year?
End of the season. Yeah.
End of the season.
So
He'd be a good addition to the. I mean, just addition to the depth. These training squads are. They are. I mean,
Well, it's only for 2 days, so I mean, it's probably just a meet and greet.
well, that's what I mean. We all, the famous one in 2009. Well, it was 2008 season 2008-2009, where I don't think there was a whole lot of work done on the pitch.
It's the Enfield meeting.
Yeah,
wasn't it?
yeah.
The famous Rob Kearney one.
Yeah, so whether much is done, I'd say that a lot of guys will just be sitting down and Joe explaining to them what he wants from them and asking them what they want from him and coming to an agreement about what way they'll go forward to be all businessy about it. But that's pretty much what it'll be, I'd say.
Because like the autumn internationals are obviously fast approaching, and they do. Because the Heineken Cup kind of falls in between them, there isn't going to be much chance for Schmidt to get in there and get the players. So I think that's why he organised that.
Yeah, and you've also got a situation where guys fly like this week. Guys are flying all over the place for various different reasons. I mean, we saw them all over in Downing Street yesterday for the Lions things. Very close. Noticeable to see that Gatland and O'Driscoll were standing as far apart as was physically possible to be, and yet still be in the same photograph. I'm surprised O'Driscoll wasn't visiting the Chancellor of the Exchequer. He was standing so far away.
Number 11.
He was standing so far away from Gatland, but. Yeah, so I mean, there's always kind of at this stage of the season, there's always lots of silly stuff going on that coaches really hate.
Yeah, and just one other thing, obviously, before we go, Leo got bad news. He had an operation on his ankle, was it? His Achilles. Sorry, his Achilles. Yeah, and he's going to be out. There's rumours that he mightn't make the Heineken Cup.
Yeah, it was explained that he wouldn't. He won't be back till after the Heineken Cup, which is a bit of a blow. In fact, a big blow. Our second rows have been playing okay. I think Rue might be back this weekend from his twisted ankle. But I wouldn't like to be relying on Tom Denton to give us impact.
No, but I have to say, I was very impressed with.
Sorry, Tom.
I was very impressed with Devin Toner. The amount of ball that he took on at first receiver, like he took on a ferocious amount of ball. Now he still runs very upright, but purely and simply because he's such a huge man.
I think people have a downer on the guy because he just looks awkward. I mean, it doesn't mean
he's
he
got
is
good
awkward.
hands. I mean, as we saw them in the match against
he's anything
Scarlets.
but awkward in terms of his passing, and you saw the one of the Scarlets where he flipped a little inside ball to Goppert. He's fabulous hands, and he's done it more than one occasion.
I think
got us out of jail
since the Six Nations period of games in the Pro 12 last year. Devin Toner is the outstanding lock in Ireland. Yeah. I think it's as simple as that.
You could certainly argue a case for it.
Yeah, I think it's as simple as that. I mean,
in terms of an athletic lock, because there's always
you need a grunter as well.
An athletic lock. So you saw McCarthy and Toner fulfilling those functions. I personally hardly saw McCarthy during the game. And that doesn't mean he had a bad game. No. That just means because he was...
It's the unseen work, is it?
The unseen work by it, tell you now. He's a legend.
Well, you look at his stats and he was obviously doing something because, I mean, he was being very workmanlike.
But that's what you want. You want a guy who's athletic, who can do all the stuff in the line out, has the hands. Mal O'Kelly is a brilliant example of that. Like he's a tough guy too, but he was 6'8" and he was able to... He was a very athletic guy. He was easy to throw up in the line out because he wasn't... 23 stone or whatever, and he did all of that stuff. He had fabulous hands. He was very fast. Yeah,
he was quick enough. Yeah, and so's Dev actually.
So we've got a guy like that, and we've got a guy like McCarthy. I think, and of course Leo. I think the only thing I don't like about McCarthy and Toner together are when you put them in a scrum. There's about 6 inches of height difference. So,
there's always going to be a difference with Toner and somebody else.
Unless you sign Richie Gray, you're going to get that.
Johan Muller was who I had on the cards.
But he is according to Greg Feek, he's a very good scrummager. I mean, he's a few issues in terms of again his height getting his backside up too high. But apart from that, apparently he's a real powerhouse. We've seen it in the loose, the amount of guys. I mean, he must have contributed to at least 5 or 6 tries, over the last 4 or 5 games where he's been given guys that extra impetus that they didn't have on their own. So no, I think he's a form lock in Ireland. I know a lot of people laugh at Devin Toner and think but they're obviously not watching the matches.
The other thing about him is though he's the thing that people say most about him is he hasn't got there's a dog in him. He needs more dog in him. There's plenty of dog. Again, he just doesn't look at it. He's just gangly. So he's never going to look like he's Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's
if you want someone with dogging him, you sign Stan Wright. I'd rather have a rugby player like Devin Toder.
Well,
On that note.
on that note, thanks a million for watching, and thanks to John and Dave. Cheers.